Hey everyone, welcome to my another interview. We have here Jeffrey Ventrella. He was the co-founder of There, and as well as you all know, Will Harvey. He was also another founder of There. Next to us, we have Francis Seventh, but he won't be talking to us. He'll be just listening because he's the one that is recording the interview, and unfortunately can't talk, which is sad. But don't worry, everything will be alright. So, would you like to, you ready for the questions?
Sure.
Okay, the first question is, how did there begin? Like, how did you start it?
Well, it began when I was working at Rocket Science Games um, in the mid 90s, and Will Harvey was there working. He went off to do some other things, and then when Rocket Science went out of business, Will asked me if I would like to join him in making a virtual world. And that was basically the beginning of it. And I said, yes, let's go for it. And so we built a prototype, which took about a year to build.
That's actually pretty fast to build a virtual world. That's actually really outstanding because I know some people who are building virtual worlds right now it takes a little bit longer than that, but for building a virtual world, like for a prototype and stuff, that's actually pretty good.
Well, no, this was just the prototype, and in fact, the prototype didn't run on the internet.
Oh, I see.
Running on the internet is a very hefty aspect
Yeah.
to the virtual world. So that's when the other people came aboard in the company, such as Ken Duda and Brett Durrett and various other people from that point forward. So really, the prototype was important, and that's when we got a lot of the look and feel and the ideas and stuff kind of figured out. But the really hard work started in '98.
Yeah, and it actually progressed it a lot. Like since then, like I've seen some pictures back in the '90s how they look, and up to now, presently, it does look outstanding. Like how it progressed and what achievements you made for creating it. Now, I was wondering, what were some challenges that you faced creating there?
Well, there were several challenges. One of them was exactly what kind of company we were and what we were doing. Because like a lot of companies, we had to sort of shift our thinking as other companies started building similar things. We needed to distinguish ourselves. We decided after kind of debating of whether we were a game versus an open-ended virtual world. Actually, Will and I were more inclined to think of it as an open-ended virtual world. Although when we first started, because of Will's game background, we were thinking of it as a world of many, many interrelated games. So it would be like a meta game or a world filled with games that people can create on their own. But then once Tom Melcher got on board and he kind of looked at the situation and decided that we should focus on the avatars and on the social aspects. So then it became a more socially focused virtual world. And that was one of the challenges, is figuring that out. And of course, there's just many, many technical challenges, including how to get the physics to work in a distributed way. That was one of the technical challenges that Ken and other people worked on.
Yeah, even today, like there were so many challenges that were not able to be fixed, and you know what? Even though it was not able to fix, it would still work out great no matter what, because many of the members did not even know what some issues were happening. They just knew like how to talk, how to buy things, how to design and stuff like that. They didn't really care so much about the details, but they had a great time in the world, and they
Cool.
really had a blast with it. Now, well, I think what everybody was wondering is, why did you call it there? Why that name? How can you, what did you make? Why did you decide calling it?
Yeah, well, back when we were starting the company, Will and I went out to a restaurant, a sushi restaurant, and we were saying, okay, what are we going to call this thing? And we were drinking sake and getting nice and toasted and coming up with all these cool ideas. I think Will got out a napkin and a pen and started writing down notes, and I was coming up with ideas. And we decided that we wanted to be a real unique place. We wanted people to have a strong sense of location, a strong sense of place. So then I blurted out the word there, and he said, "Ah, that's it. That sounds good." So we went with there, and figured that it would make for a lot of interesting puns and marketing phrases and slogans. Unfortunately, it does cause a bit of confusion, but anyway, that's how we came up with the name.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. That's actually pretty cool how you developed it because I actually didn't know, and I always did wonder how you created that name, and that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, we were hoping that it would become so, that it would become a household world, just like Second Life is kind of almost a household word, where people would say, "Hey, let's go there tonight."
Yeah.
That's how we were hoping it would be on that level of familiarity.
Yeah, and actually, that's pretty funny. I tell my friends sometimes, like, I'm going on to there, and they're like, "What?" You know what I mean? It's actually pretty funny using like a
Yeah.
word that's like meant in a sentence, and you translating it into an actual virtual world thing.
My new phrase has been there, done that.
That's pretty good. I was also my next question is, where did you get the symbol of there? Like, how did you design the symbol?
Yeah, actually, we had another symbol before, and I don't know, I think it's on my website. I put it up there, which was kind of a sphere, like a world with different puzzle pieces, and the puzzle pieces had kind of earthy colors and stuff. And
Uh,
Will and I made that because we were thinking of this idea of interrelated games. Um, and then after the company got bigger, Tom decided that he wanted to give it a bit more of a corporate sort of look, and that's when the blue and red symbol came along. We weren't really a part of that decision making at that point, um, so that's kind of how that ended up.
I see. That's actually interesting. Also, I have a feeling a lot of people would be surprised as how you created the symbol and how it was developed.
Yeah, well, we weren't. I mean, I think it's not a bad symbol. I don't know if it really visualizes the original vision of the world.
Yeah,
It's blue and red. It's bright blue and red, and kind of has more of a corporate sort of look and feel, which perhaps was the intention, was that to allow there to adapt to many different uses and kinds of products.
yeah,
So I think that was part of the reason for that logo.
yeah.
Logo was created by an outside company. It was an outside design company that
I see.
was paid huge sums of money.
Yeah, I know that for the when we had their games, it was like Olympics we had back. It started, I believe, in 2004 or 2006. But I know that we would have a contest and make a poster, and you had to use their symbol involved to develop to win the contest. You had to use type of their symbol, and the work that the people did using their symbol was actually pretty interesting. You know what I mean? Just
Cool.
a simple object that you see, like they actually designed it a magnificent thing that you probably would never imagine, like what a person could do.
Great. That's a cool idea.
Yeah. Now my next question is, what was it like working with Will?
There were some difficult times, and there were some really wonderful times. We The first year I was basically working out of my home, and he was working part time out of his home because he was still finishing up a gig at Adobe Systems. Um, and then after that year of prototyping, we got together and we worked in his house, and did a lot of coding and a lot of thinking and a lot of talking. So it was a very creative time.
That's really good. Now my next question is, uh, now I was told that you guys developed it in Will's basement. Now, Was it a bit difficult to develop it with limited technology?
Actually, it wasn't done in a basement, but that's a good enough metaphor. That's the classic startup scenario. Um, Basically, in fact, you ask about limited technology. At the very beginning, I started prototyping out of a Silicon Graphics Iris computer, of all things. And then at a certain point, Will said, you should wean yourself from this SGI and start developing on Windows. So he got me all started up on Windows, and that's when I made the shift over to that, and basically had my own box. So we basically each had our own boxes, and we developed it mostly remotely, and then we got together and worked on it. So in the early stages, it didn't really require a lot of tech, but of course eventually it did once the server infrastructure became a part of it.
I see, yeah. My next question is, what was theirs main purpose? What was the purpose of there?
Well, like I said earlier, we at first we were looking for a way to have people play games and invent new games and take elements from one game and apply it to another game, and to let a sort of a playful creativity emerge from that. Some of that ambition maybe carried over throughout the years, but mostly that got um, lower priority when once the company was more about building a social oriented world. So it sort of became more about socializing after several years.
Uh, well, that's good when it came to social because a lot of people like social places like to hang out and instead of like something that like you're limited on doing things.
Yeah.
Um, my next my next question is: did you ever regret selling there to Forterra?
I wasn't part of that decision, and I certainly would have been against it. Um, it happened right, I can't remember whether it was right before or right after the Iraq invasion, which I was not in favor of. And so I kind of had a negative feeling about things at the moment, at that time. So that wasn't my decision.
Uh, yeah, it was pretty sad after 2006 with the Black Friday. But thank goodness, I mean, Michael Wilson did keep it on for a couple more years, and even though it did close eventually, but we were still lucky that there was still growing and still being more populated.
Actually, I remember now. I think the Forterra thing was considerably after I mentioned the Iraq era. That was when there kind of got its little military branch happening. I think that's what I was referring to, which
Uh,
then sort of resulted in Forterra.
I see now. Okay. Uh, Now, my next question is, what kind of projects have you been working on after leaving there?
I've been doing lots of different things. I worked at Adobe for a while, doing JavaScript for 3D graphics on for Acrobat, and then I worked at Linden Lab for 2 years, um, and various other projects. I recently have been working on a book, which is about a lot of the avatar work that I've done at there and Linden Lab. So I've been very busy.
Nice. Now, since you mentioned about Linden Labs, now I was told that you developed the avatars puppeteering in Linden Labs. Now, what did you use it for, and what is avatars puppeteering?
Yeah, well, this is actually something that it's an idea that I explored way back at Dare.com when Will and I were looking at some of the early physics systems. to create an avatar that has a lot more motion vocabulary using some physics. And in fact, some of the same physical techniques were used in the Flexies, which I built at Linden Lab earlier, which is what my tentacles are made of. And the Flexies was
Nice.
basically just sort of saying, we have too many rigid, clunky prims. We need to have some flowing motion. And so I invented the Flexi technology, and then a guy named Tom Yadweb took that and sort of helped integrate that into the system. So now Flexi is a big part of what Second Life users are using. And also, it was similar to the puppeteering technique that I made, which I called physical avatar. Basically, it takes the avatar and turns it into a rag doll, but without the gravity part. So your avatar is there, kind of floating in space, and you can pose it in different ways and then save the poses. Potentially as a way to create animations that are appropriate for the scenery. Part of the idea was to build animations for your avatar without having to leave Second Life and build it in a separate application. You can do it all in world. But another reason, and probably the most important reason for the puppeteering project, was to create body language while you're talking, so that you'll be able to just move parts of your body to create subtle messages as you're talking, which is a project that I've sort of been trying on and off for several years, and it's described in my book.
Nice. Yeah, those tentacles are pretty funny, like how they're moving and stuff, and they're pretty cool. Now I know you probably can't say this, but could you give us like some basic things, like the projects that you're working on now?
Well, I was doing a project. I might be doing a little bit more of it at some point, but on and off, I've been working on an iPad application with some guys down in Palo Alto, and I might be doing a project with Ted Nelson, who's one of the early visionaries of the internet. And also, I've been talking to Will about possibly doing a project. And like I said, I'm working on a book. I actually have got two book prototypes done, and I can send you links to all of these things, and you can post them if you want, along with this interview.
Awesome, that would be great. That would be awesome. Now, here are the questions for the members. Now, the members had a chance to send you questions regarding there. This is a general announcement for those members who send in about will their return, will he buy there, and stuff like that. Jeffrey is not in charge of there.com anymore. He has no control whether or not there will return or not. It is a shame that there did close, and I know it took a major toll on everyone's lives about its closure, but he has no control of Michael Wilson at all. He was just the founder of there, and and I'm very sorry for everyone who did send in questions about will there reopen stuff, but he does not have any control of whether or not it will reopen or not.
That's about right. And after all, sometimes it's better to start over and create a new thing.
Yes.
Which is probably what I'd rather do. Get a nice fresh start.
Yes. Now, we have our first question, and the first question is from Eva Last. His question is, what have you been up to since there.com? You pretty much explained that you were doing some Linden Labs work and a few other projects as well.
Yep, that's right. And another thing, actually, a long time ago, I created this artificial life simulation called Gene Pool, and one of my colleagues at Linden Lab has offered to help develop that in a new platform. So potentially, hopefully, soon we might see it on the iPhone and the iPad. I got my new little iPad here, and I'm also thinking of developing other things on the iPad. I think it's a,
Awesome.
yeah.
You know, be, be kind of cool is to get Second Life working on the iPad.
Unless it makes it so hot that you can't hold it, which seems to be what Second Life does.
Yeah, that is true. It does take up a lot of resources, and it does hurt the CPU a bit. Another question is Lost Buddy 1. His question is, any plans to open there.com clone or a similar client to there in the future? And also, what current projects are you a part that might include anything about there.com, if there is any?
Well, like I said, it's not up to me to start there.com again. What was that your question? I didn't quite get the question, but I have a feeling that I won't be able to answer it.
No, that was from Lost Buddy 1. He was pretty much asking, will you be making something that's similar to their in the future? Like if you're working on some projects that has to do with their type of client and stuff.
Possibly. It all has to do with whether there's money.
Yes, money does play a big role in everyone's lives. Okay, now my next question is, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Okay, this question is from JS1, and his question is, if not, will you be creating another world like of there? And we pretty much answered that he can't really say anything at all. JS1 asked, will he be creating another Their World type of program? And yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, there will be new things built in the future, and I'll be part of these new things. But you know, whether it's like there, I mean, I think there will be things similar to it. All of these worlds derive from each other. They get ideas from each other, and they sort of continue the evolution of virtual worlds into the future. And so, you know, things continue to evolve.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. This question is from, sorry if I can pronounce it well, Del McNancy 2004. He's been with there for 4 years. He asks, Mr. Ventrella, are you aware of the impact you and Mr. Harvey's virtual world there has had on many people? What are your views on it? For instance, if it was not for there.com, I would have never met my wife, and we would have never had this beautiful son and this life that we have now. Number 2, was there some things with there that you had originally planned that never came to be? An example would be how the Chaz mentioned we were originally supposed to have chickens to ride on.
Okay, let me start with the first question, where this person is talking about meeting his wife and having a son and all of that. Of course, that's awesome that some people would meet in a virtual world, and I'm glad that they were able to test the real chemistry, because obviously in a virtual world you can't catch the real chemistry in face to face or in the flesh, and also you can't actually conceive of a child in a virtual world, but maybe someday you can. So that was kind of cool to hear that a family was born with there as a part of it. I do know that with Second Life, some of the people I worked with have had whole parts of their lives interwoven between the virtual and the real, and that's kind of cool. And what was your second question? There were three of them, I think.
It was a two-question. The second question was there some things with there that you had originally planned that never came to be? Like, for example, how the Chaz mentioned we were originally supposed to have chickens to ride on.
Yeah, well, first of all, there were many, many things that we even prototyped and talked about and spent some time working on, possibly to develop into features, and they were never made. But such is the nature of startup companies and innovation. And yeah, there was a lot of people in the company who had a very healthy sense of humor, and they were wanting to push the absurd limit as much as they could. So the idea of having chickens instead of horses, giant chickens, was a really fun idea, and I'm sorry that never happened. That would have been so cool.
Yeah. But who knows, maybe in the future, if you do work on something, maybe we could do have chickens to ride.
Yep, I have very many friends who are chickens, and so I'm all in favor of that.
Awesome. Another question is from Emma Warbridge. She was a member for 3 years. Would you ever work towards making another virtual world with lifelike physics like there.com?
Sure. Give me some money and I'll do it in a heartbeat.
If I had the money, I would definitely give it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, here's actually an interesting question. This one's from Timothy Worley. He wrote, how come you were not able to bring the avatar-centric communication into Second Life? Now, this is sort of what we're supposed to be talking about there, but I guess we could drift off a little bit off to Second Life. And, like, for example, the default walk, stand, and run animations are in desperate need of a makeover. How come you didn't invent a virtual cat for there?
Okay, well, the first question is, well, when I did join Linden Lab, Philip and Corey and the others were in favor of me working on the avatar system. But as it turns out, Linden Lab continued to have lots of problems with server crashes and basically lots of infrastructure problems and UI problems, and these were very high priority. And I actually had various people in the company that were working with me over the years on various avatar features, but those kind of got set aside at various points in time because of higher priority problems. When the server crashes and the virtual world goes down, that's important. So the company was really focused on those things. And I think that, when I was at there.com, we were committed to making avatar-centric communication. That was our main centerpiece. And at Linden Lab, the centerpiece, I think, for Linden Lab was something different, or is something different. It's a lot more about generating user-generated content and the whole virtual economics and so on and so forth. So the avatar stuff never quite got high enough in priority to get all of the resources that it needed.
Yeah. And the second question was, how come you weren't able to make the virtual cat for there?
Are you referring to a prototype that I made of a cat, or is that just asking, was there a cat? Because I did work on a cat
Oh,
prototype.
you did?
Yeah, it was quite awesome, in fact. It's very cat-like. Yeah, I would have loved to have that in there. In fact, I still have the code.
Yeah, don't share it to Michael Wilson.
That's all right. I've got it tight in a box here at home.
That's good. Yeah, because a lot of people were begging for cats like for years. Like, we want cats, we want cats.
Well, actually, in fact, pretty much all the code that I wrote is somewhere on a disk somewhere. So I'm sure Mike Wilson has it. Um, but yeah, I mean, if there are dogs and if you're a cat person, you're going to be like, well, where are the cats, right?
Yeah. Here's a question. Go on.
Go ahead.
What were you saying before?
Just going to say, if you're a giant chicken person, you'll want a giant chicken as well. So, you know.
Yeah, that's true. This question is from Francis7. His question is, at what point was the avatar sex change feature removed from there, and why?
Actually, I'm not aware of a sex change feature, although I do know that when I was prototyping the avatar and creating a whole genetic system for the avatar's features, which never really got implemented to the degree that I wanted it to, I had a very extensive avatar customization system starting. It was crude, but I think the idea of using a kind of a genetic base with the potential for breeding could have been very powerful. And in fact, when I was doing this, I realized that it was actually easier in some ways to not have a sex gene, to just let the gender of the avatar be a matter of setting parameters in certain ways. And in fact, you know, there are many people who sort of see gender in a similar way, as on a sliding scale and on a multidimensional scale. And I think to hardwire that, it makes sense in most cases, but it would have made for some very interesting fluid dynamics. But actually, I'm not aware of any change, sex change. I think I remember now. You know, my memory is vague because it was a long time ago, and it was 6.5 years of working on it. But I think I remember somebody saying, "Hey Jeff, will you make an audio sound for the sex change?" And I was like, "Wow, that's a cool project, an audio sound for a sex change." And I actually made a WAV file that represented a sex change, and it was kind of groovy, kind of metaphysical, and there's a little twinge of pain in there as well.
Um, Now, another question Francis asked was, what early feature slash activity was left out or canceled in early development that you thought would have made Theater.com a better place, and why was it canceled to left out?
Well, one thing that was part of Will and my early prototyping was that it was actually on a planet. It was on a planet, and we used double precision floating point numbers for the physics and the rendering, not the rendering, but the physics, and that meant that we could actually simulate a world on an Earth-sized planet. And we had developed a fairly extensive architecture for that, but it would have been hard to maintain that whole architecture. So we didn't get to have our original planet. That would have been very cool because we would have had a whole a plan of populating different continents and islands and so forth. And also, once you have a planet, you've got the potential for some amazing weather and astrology and so on and so forth. So that was regretfully never part of the product.
It's a shame, though. But who knows, you know what I mean? You still have the files, you still got everything, but you know what I mean? You can still use it in the future if you decide. You can still use it in the future if you ever decide to make another virtual world or something like that.
Yep.
I do want to add something about the planet. Now, when you created there, since I think this is the only virtual world that could do it that I am aware of, now you made the virtual world a way that we are able to drive our buggies around the world without having to teleport. Now, in Second Life, or if you go to, let's say, V-Side, you can't do that. at all. You have to physically teleport to places. Now, how did you get that kind of development done? Because that's actually pretty unique to see that, to actually drive around the whole world.
Uh, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. You mean you can drive your buggy around the world?
I mean, like, let's say if I want to go to Aurora to Correjo, I could drive there. You know what I mean? Or if I want to go to from one island to another island without having to teleport.
Yeah, I don't actually know the reason why Linden Lab or why Second Life would not allow you to get from one place to another.
Yeah, like as Francis Seven just said, like that.
The reason why we called it there because it's a continuous and contiguous space. You can move from one place to the other like in the real world, and that was important when we were developing it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like how you were able to make it where that you didn't need to teleport to places, that you could just drive to a location.
Well, it requires a lot of technology. So when you pass over one sim or one region that's controlled by a server or a set of servers, the server has to hand over all of the assets and the communication and the physics over to the contiguous server. And that requires quite a bit of technology. And in fact, I think I remember in there.com things would kind of glitch, like if you
Yeah.
drove your buggy over a sim line.
Yeah, sometimes when you drive over another server, uh, you would get like a black screen, like for about a couple of seconds, and then it would pop right back in pretty fast. But that was like certain sectors were doing that. It wasn't like every sector. It was some of it, and it wasn't really too bad though.
Well, the whole technology for doing that is getting simpler and easier and more high tech all the time. And so, it's getting to the point where if you want to build a virtual world, you go and you hire uh, a grid. You just sort of go get an off the shelf grid and run your sims, and it's going to be much simpler in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Another question is this one from Surfboard. Did you ever think that There.com would be that popular?
Most of the time, we tried not to have any particular expectations. I think it's best to say this could either flop tomorrow or it could become the biggest thing since sliced bread. So we just, you know, we were hopeful but not too optimistic.
Yeah. One of the questions people were asking is how, now with the avatar's look set. Now, how did you guys were able to like make the like the feet and the hands? Because I know some people were asking like how did you like design the avatar's look set?
What do you mean by look set?
I mean, like the avatar's looks. Like when you go in a world, you would see like a person, like an avatar's body and stuff. Like what kind of like some encoding that you were using? Like how did you develop it?
Well, I all I can say is I don't think it was developed as extensively as it could have or should have been done. Customizing your own avatars is one of the most important things that a person can do. Um, and one can spend hours and days and weeks and years customizing their avatar in different ways and changing their customization. So I think it needs to be very, very deep. Um, I think that compared to some of the early prototypes that we had worked on, the avatars in there.com look kind of similar to each other. There's not a whole lot of variety.
Yeah,
I would love to have seen more variety and what we had prototyped was avatars that were just as um, varied as the ones in Second Life.
Yeah.
So it's too bad that we never got that feature in.
Yeah, I think the problem was, this is my beliefs, I think what it was is that because since you and all the founders, the founders that created there left, they didn't really have that much knowledge of how they created the avatar and like how to change the avatar's look and change it more differently, like how they have it here in Second Life. I think that was probably the issue. They were limited on the amount of knowledge of the avatars, so they had the only thing they could do is like improve on what they had instead of trying to change something different that they don't really have that much knowledge to it.
Actually, I don't think it was so much a knowledge thing. It was really more of a business decision, a marketing sort of thing. Um,
Uh,
you can build a virtual world like Burning Man, or you can build a virtual world like Disneyland. And I would have been more in favor of a little bit more of the Burning Man quality, but it turned into be a little bit more like Disneyland.
yeah. Uh, Now this person, his name is Glenn Sanders. He works for Blue Mars. He's a part of the community team. He's a nice guy. He's actually pretty a good fellow that I know. Here are some of his questions. He asks, "What are the ingredients for building a thriving virtual world? A thriving."
I'm sorry, what's the question? What are the ingredients for?
Building a thriving virtual world.
Well, some flour, salt, baking soda, bit of safflower oil. Um, well, the ingredients you can't list the ingredients like you can in a recipe. Um, so it's just like somebody asked Louis Armstrong what is jazz, and he couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
So
Another question he asked was, "How do you feel about the future of the virtual worlds? Like, what do you think of the other virtual worlds that people are making right now?"
now that's a fun question to ask because I love thinking about the future of virtual worlds, and I think that in fact it's already happening. Virtual worlds are really not necessarily one place that you log into, and you have one representation, and then you leave and come back to it. It's really a state of mind. It's a way of kind of astral projecting into other different realms, which is really a part of our lives to begin with. And so I think that virtual worlds will continue to exist, but they may not look the same as they do now. In fact, mobile, we may be immersing ourselves in various virtual experiences on our mobile devices while out in the world in various places. So I would expect that the mixing of the real and the virtual will continue to the point where sometimes it's hard to tell whether you're in a virtual world or whether you're in the real world.
Yeah, because I like when I came from Coke Studio. It was a 2D virtual world, nothing, and then when I came to 3D there, like everything changed. Like you would see the avatars look, everything, the graphics changed dramatically a lot, and then once they're closed, like thousands of virtual worlds start opening up, and you see what kind of technology that the people are developing and what kind of things that we as members can work on and develop. It's actually really interesting.
It's definitely there's a lot more to see.
Another question he asks, how do you see the virtual worlds in 5 years from now?
Well, that's hard to predict, but in fact, it's so hard to predict that we may not be able to predict it, um, except to say that, like I said before, the virtual I think will continue to mix in with our real lives, quite a bit to the point where we don't necessarily distinguish between the two.
Another question he asked was, will they be independent worlds or interconnected by metaverse, or will the web and social media all evolve to 3D to become Web 3.0?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I don't know if 3D is necessarily the direction that everything will go. But I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of your question.
He asked, will they be independent worlds or in, in, connected by metaverse? I think that's what he means by the question, where do you see the virtual worlds in 5 years from now? I think he means by, will they be independent worlds or connected by metaverse?
I don't think there's an or. I think it will be all of the above. In fact, I hope it would be all of the above. I would like to see certain worlds that are where, like, the whole waft and weave of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the various infrastructures of internet activity, where many products are being woven into that as we speak. Those would be the virtual experiences that are very much integrated and connected. But at the same time, there should be isolated, self-contained virtual worlds that are particular to a certain use and very, very efficient for a particular use and activity. So I would think all of the above, all the different variations of virtual worlds will evolve. At least I would hope so.
I completely agree with you with that. This question's coming from another person. He asked, for people who are continuing developing a 3D virtual world, what are the key components of having a successful virtual world?
Well, I think these days it's social networking is kind of important to figure out, and not necessarily 3D computer graphics. I think that now people are accustomed to the idea that you can have many different kinds of virtual worlds. Some are super realistic, some are not very realistic, but they kind of need to have some social component to them, otherwise they become lonely places. So I think that's an important ingredient.
Thank you. I believe that is it, everyone. I think that is it. I don't have any more questions. I would like to thank Jeffrey for coming by and taking his time developing there.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Francis Seven for taking the time and recording the video and spending time sitting there alone, not saying a word. I know it's probably very tough for him because I know he's very into this, and he really loved this.
Cool.
And
also,
go on.
I'll just let you know that shortly I expect to have my book in a beta stage. The book is called Virtual Body Language, and it's virtualbodylanguage.com is where you can look it up and see what stage it's at the moment. It's not actually available yet, but it will be soon. And this book should be interesting to their people because it tells a lot of the story about the creation of the avatar and some of the aspirations, and it really kind of gets into the philosophical issues of having a virtual body and expressing with that body, something that I could just talk and write about forever. So I've been really having a good time with this book. So that's my little plug.
Awesome. I definitely can't wait to read your book. I'm very excited to read it. I I definitely want to thank you personally and Will Harvey for developing there. I think without you and Will developing there, we would not be here today, and I would not have met Francis or any other of my friends. And you guys have done a wonderful job. I wish they were still going on, but you know what? You did a wonderful job, and we are all very thankful for you doing it.
Thank you. Well, who knows? Maybe someday we'll have something new for you to immerse yourself into.
Yes, I can't wait for that.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, take care. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.